Hi, welcome to the Firestarters video series. I'm super excited today to have a really wonderful guest on. My name, as you know, is Steve Scheier. I'm coming to you from overcast Seattle. I've worked in cannabis since 2018. I talk and write about power, and I offer leaders in cannabis leadership guidance, curated advisory boards, and soon in May and June, we're going to be starting a Cannabis CEO Council. I'm also the co-author of Power Up, Essential Tools for Cannabis Leaders, which is available on Amazon. Our guest today is Michael Webster. Michael is the CEO of Exspiravit in Michigan, and I'm super thrilled to have Michael on the show today. Michael, welcome to Firestarters.
Steve, thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you to your audience for tuning in, and I'm really looking forward to the chat.
Thank you. So, Michael, as I always start out, I always ask people to talk about the state of cannabis in their home state. So please tell us a little bit about the state of cannabis in the state of Michigan.
Sure. And I'll just add a caveat that I can't claim Michigan as my home state. I'm a New Yorker. I made the exodus from New York to Michigan to participate in a regulated market that stood up quicker. So I can speak for Michigan somewhat, but I can't claim it as my home. So I get it. I'm not an interloper or a carpetbagger, but I know my place, and I don't want to step on the good people of Michigan, their rich history here. Michigan cannabis, the Michigan cannabis market, both medical and adult use, are, in a word, dynamic, Steve. We just became the third largest market behind only California and Colorado. And for an immature market like Michigan to leapfrog states like Washington and Oregon and other states that have been stood up for a while is really impressive. So we've got a lot going on here, a lot of progressive movement. I think it was just yesterday, perhaps Wednesday of this week, the former MRA, the Michigan Marijuana Regulatory Agency, changed their name to the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. So we're seeing, even in the nomenclature, we're seeing progressivism, we're seeing evolution, and we're seeing the embrace of cannabis as not just a scientific term, but an appropriate term. And we're kind of doing away with that term marijuana that, has some racial, ethnic slurs attached to it. And, so it's from the top to the bottom, Michigan is a really dynamic place. We are seeing some price compression and some saturation in the markets, as you see in, other states, but things are starting to settle. It's a commodity, right? So things are starting to settle, but I'm just really excited about where Michigan is right now and what we see ahead.
Well, thank you, Michael. You have a really great story, which we'll get into with your company. Sure. But before we do that, let's talk about your origin story in cannabis. How did you get started in cannabis?
Sure. So I tease that a little bit. Native New Yorker. I think, as a young person, I was just as impacted by, these old cannabis laws, which, didn't see cannabis as medicine and, saw it as a Schedule I threat on par with heroin and cocaine. And, so, being a New York City resident, I endured that over policing in my community. And a lot of times it involved interaction with the police for cannabis. So I was just as impacted at a young age, and sort of bumped me off my trajectory towards college, because, with the criminalization of cannabis came a whole other social impact. And, that's another conversation about equity. But, impacted things like access to fair housing, access to Pell Grants and other financial aid. And that one interaction with the police over a small amount of cannabis bumped me off my trajectory. And it took that much longer to get back on track. Ultimately went on and earned my degrees. But so that's where I started. So I was a casual user. I like to admit, and I speak for wide swath of New Yorkers, particularly from my demographic, that we didn't know anything about cannabis. Steve, for all the things that we used to criticize California on, getting the latest music last or getting onto the latest fashions last, things like that moved westward. Cannabis has its origins or at least our cannabis market has its origins in California. And we knew nothing. I never even heard the terms indica and sativa, which turn out not to be scientific or accurate terms. They're kind of a myth. Let's talk more about where folks took plants from. but we just, we knew nothing. I knew nothing about cannabinoids, terpenoids,
Right.
anything, alternative consumption methods. It was just, really akin to what we, generational information about, getting high, and our variety was green or brown, and that's that was the extent of our variety. So it wasn't until sort of the pre-revolution in the 90s that we saw with higher THC concentrations and more variety in the market, and then probably a warmer embrace by pop culture, the music, the movies, and so you saw some normalization there, not legalization or decriminalization but social normalization.
Yeah.
So that sort of informed my path for a while. I enjoyed cannabis recreationally, and it wasn't until my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer that we took a different look at it, and we started to pay attention to the medicinal benefits and started doing some research. And I was in graduate school at the time, and I actually wrote my graduate thesis on the intersection of cancer treatment and cannabis. So I had an opportunity to dive deep. We implemented cannabis into my mom's regimen, and forewent the need for traditional Western medicine for a long time, and she enjoyed a great quality of life. Ultimately, I don't like to say she lost a battle, but
Right.
the fight ended. But she enjoyed.
And how did she react?
Life.
How did it make a difference for her?
I'll tell you a quick story, and this
Please.
sums it up. Just before Easter, she had been diagnosed as stage 4, and wasn't given. I think she was given about 6 months, and I was planning a trip. I canceled that trip and said I went to see her instead. And when I got there, it was the day before Easter. No, it was Easter Day, and a lot of friends and family had brought food by, like we traditionally do, and the house was full. The table was full of a full spread, and my mom had really stopped eating. She reported everything that tasted like metal in her mouth. So, and that was the first time we shared cannabis with her. Now, she had been, I think, a recreational user as a younger woman, but nothing on par with this. So we, gave her a joint. She smoked it. Just different person, Steve. Came down and laid waste to the spread. So we knew we were on to something. We knew we could at least get her the strength and the energy to mount a fight. And it was just on every level, from the nutrition to the strength to combating the stress. It's a stressful condition. And just finding those moments of peace and relaxation. And then the sleep, a widely ignored remedy, a widely ignored part of our health is getting quality sleep. So
absolutely,
what we considered indica at the time, I'm sure it was a terpene profile, not indica, but those strains really helped her and aided her. So from there, I was kind of sold on the medicinal benefits and became an advocate and a champion. And I saw a for-purpose market. I saw a legal, regulated market coming. Just when, and I said, we're in between a food fight between states' rights and the federal government. And so then it was about picking spots. So when I made a commitment to try to get into the regulated market, I looked at my region, and the closest state that gave real promise was Michigan. So I just kind of packed up everything, trekked out here, planted my flag, and pursued licensure. So so that was at least the first leg of my journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could spend, and part of me would love to spend time more talking about your mom and also about how it affected you, as a younger person. I really want to talk about your company because we've talked about it. I'm really excited about it. So please tell us about your company and what your hopes and dreams are, because I think it's super cool. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it's and as a aspiring cannabis mogul, if you will, someone who's spent enough time as I have been talking to investors and talking to folks, I should have my elevator pitch down, drop of a dime. But I like to. I don't like to refer to it as the elevator pitch. It's my story, and we all have stories. And these stories are what's going to define our market. So Exspiravit was a labor of love. I know it's a lot of syllables, and I later learned the market, the science of branding, that no more than 2 syllables. And but at the time, there's a little bit of story. It's Latin for ghost, And I started off as a ghostwriter, Steve. I got into my entry point was contracting with the early versions of dispensaries and other caregivers who were developing content to promote their business. I was really frustrated by all this rhetoric about, this particular strain will knock your socks off or blow your head, all this, nothing based in reality. Right. And I was, again, thinking about that for-purpose, the patient or the for-purpose consumer. I thought we needed something a little more clinical that would describe the euphoria, not knocking euphoria. Euphoria is king and flowers king, and I get that, but I just thought we could bring a little bit more of a clinical element.
More specific.
More specific and more grounded in reality. This is going to make you sleepy. This is going to make you hungry, stimulate your appetite. This is going to have you locked in the couch, melting into the sofa. And there's a place for that. I don't want to discount that rhetoric for that market. But I was focused a little more on something a little more clinical. So didn't get a ton of traction there, but I was able to cut my teeth. I was able to develop relationships with operators, and most operators were still, stuck on that old style, old content. And that was okay because it gave me the opportunity to learn the market and then pursue licensure. So we went for the low-hanging fruit. Michigan, I talked about how progressive Michigan has been, and no state has got the equity argument right. However, some have gotten close. New York has a real shot with the $200 million equity fund. We have high hopes there. But Michigan at least put their money where their mouth was. They weren't giving out access to SBA loans or a fund or anything like that. But I think they were giving the closest thing to that, and that was the education, the informational component of what a startup operator needs. So this was right around the beginning of the pandemic where we were locked down, and ironically, it provided for a really smooth process for me because everything was locked down. Administrative services were being offered almost exclusively online, no in-person stuff. So I was kind of able to, on that front, cruise through the early licensure process. Spent many a night sitting at home trying to write applications and deal with responses and deficiencies and stuff. But as far as submissions and getting feedback from the administrators, it was a pretty smooth process. And what they rolled out right behind that were a ton of webinars, Zooms, email chats. Just they maximized the digital platform and granting access to those resources. So I leaned in. I knew there was no capital, in sight. I knew, the only thing really we're waiting on the other side of licensure were sharks and lions, those type of investors. And I put them in those two buckets. I think sharks just devour you. At least with lions, everyone eats. You may eat last, but you may eat a smaller portion, but with lions, everyone eats. So we're fearing that on the other side of licensure. And my idea was to grow without capital, to scale without capital. And that meant relationships, increasing my knowledge base, and just gobbling up every resource. So if you saw a webinar, if you saw a Zoom or an email thread, I was on it. Right after we got vaccinated, my family, we were able to travel down to Florida, and I spent we were down there for about 3 weeks. Most of the time I was on a Zoom, sponsored by the then MRA. So that's what I did. I just gobbled up those resources. And then eventually we got through the licensure process. And the way things work here in Michigan is step one so the licensure process is divided into 2 steps. So step one is really the vetting. So no matter whether you're going for a small cultivation, micro license, or big retail, we're all going through that same initial vetting process. Step 2 is actually selecting which license you want and paying for it. So we all went through that gauntlet. That was step 1. And the lowest hanging fruit on the other side, without any capital, without any property, was the event organizer license. At the time, it was the marijuana event organizer license. Low barrier for entry, targeted folks who, weren't really sure about their place in cannabis, wanted to stick their toe in. And I grabbed that license, Steve, just to show potential investors or strategic partners that I had been vetted, that I was to be worked with. It didn't require real estate. It didn't require, it was really low barrier for entry. So I got that. And then we started looking at what we really wanted to do. And that was solventless extraction. That's where my passion was. I'm a rosin guy, particularly in the research I did around my mom's disease. Right. That's where my heart landed. And that's what I wanted to do. But if you're in cannabis as a startup operator and you're not pivoting, you're standing still. And as you stand still, the market will move on and leave you behind. So I did so many pivots. Last count I was at a 360, but I've probably gone beyond that. Almost
You're in
drilled
like
a hole,
720
myself
already.
I needed an auger to get myself out. But again, part of the process, part of the learning process. And I don't regret any thing that I considered doing, whether it was retail for a moment, the micro business for a moment, because it was all informative opportunities. So we pivoted back. And once we pivoted back, we looked at the saturation in all these other areas, retail and cultivation, and saw tremendous promise in this event license. We said, wow, we can not only throw amazing events, we can evolve what a cannabis event is, but we can be an asset to the ecosystem. We can help operators, whether cultivators or retailers, showcase their products. Tremendous influence, tremendous credibility to be gained. And what greater asset in the space is there than credibility? So again, realized a whole new potential, dropped everything, leaned heavy into the event organizer license. But we stepped back and said, okay, well, what is a cannabis event? Cannabis event 1.0, as you may know, is 5,000 people corralled into the fairgrounds, makeshift stage, cannabis-friendly artists, maybe a headliner. He or she performs, everybody lights up, combusts.
Combusts.
I want to make that point. They combust, and then that's it. It's a couple hours. Now, with the way the market has evolved, Steve, we can do that at home. We can do that in our backyard. We can have our friends over. We can rent out a place and have a private party. Here in Michigan, the CRA, Cannabis Regulatory Agency, does not regulate personal behavior. So if you want to do a private event, you can do that. So what we started thinking about what we could offer to this space, what we could offer to the attendee, to the client, to the venue owner that was, represented raising the bar. So we thought about it. We said, we want cannabis to be the ingredient, no longer the product. We want the ingredient that will activate an experience, so that we found ourselves at the intersection of cannabis and entertainment. And when you think about normalization, we think about decriminalization to normalization. Normalization is going to come from leaning into public consumption, being able to, have cannabis featured anywhere alcohol is. Maybe not together, but at least in the same spaces, in the same consideration. So once that light bulb went off, like, it's on, it's on. The world is ours. There's this regulated space was empty, complete vacuum. No one had planted a flag, and no one coming out of, that wave of the pandemic seized the opportunity to raise the bar. No one said, let's scale it down. Let's not do the smash and grab 7,500 people. Let's do something smaller and evolve the event. Too bad for them, because we did it. We've got our signature event offering coming up in August 20th. And when I tell you where it is, that's going to take a moment to sort of add some information. I have to shout out Muskegon, Michigan. Muskegon is a waterfront municipality on the west side of Michigan, the widely ignored west side of Michigan, right on Lake Michigan. When I say this municipality has leaned into cannabis, they have made it, the new administration ran on cannabis. Not only that, they ran on having cannabis featured anywhere alcohol is. They to show you their progressivism, they just recently authorized the city-owned Mercy Health Arena, a large hockey arena, and their minor league baseball complex, Marsh Field, which is neighboring, for consumption events. So, I mean, it's like the holy grail for an operator like me. So immediately leaned in. Now, we're a small equity operation.
Did the heavens part?
The heavens parted, the Nile, the Red Sea parted, and we saw these welcoming arms. And, the pain point in our operation is at the municipal level. It's not so much folks are opposed to consumption events. They're not aware. They're not informed. So a lot of what my pipeline building involves is meeting with municipalities and really lobbying them into opting into events. You show them the revenue, you show them the neighboring municipality is doing it, they're getting the money, and then you bring them along. Because right now, out of 1,700 municipalities in Michigan, there are only about 10 municipalities that have opted in. Now, the remaining haven't opted out, they just haven't opted. So there's work there to be
Okay,
done.
so let's go back to that. So there are 1,700 municipalities in the state of Michigan.
Yes.
They range
Roughly.
from really big, like Detroit, to very small.
To
only
200 people.
Right, and only 10 of those 1,700 municipalities
have opted in affirmatively
for
consumption events, for
consumption events,
public consumption events. Yeah.
Right.
So
it's not unlike the situation in California, where it's legal in California, but many counties and cities do not allow it.
Right. The power rests at the municipal level, no matter what. We talk a lot about the states' rights and the federal government and their position, but the real pain point, the real power rests at the municipal level. So anything you can do for those aspiring, to get into this space, the more relationship building you can do at the municipal level, the better off you be, no matter where you are in the supply chain. So Muskegon, just wanted to shout them out. So they have welcomed us. We have our signature event, the Canna Carnival.
Canna Carnival.
And it is literally what, as it sounds. We are bringing public consumption to a carnival. August 20th, it'll be, be twilight of the summer, but still good weather out. But we'll be indoors, air conditioned. All the amenities are offering. Our menu will range from general admission to uber spectacular VIP package. We have amazing sponsorship opportunities. Again, Steve, this is a giant arena. This is the type of venue that cannabis event producers like myself don't get access to. So this is a real quantum leap in the space. So
and how many people are you hoping will attend?
So we're expecting about 5,000 people, which is
Wonderful.
aggressive and ambitious, but we feel like we can meet the moment, because we recognize that this is not a go it alone process. You and I have talked about wanting to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together. So we'll be calling on other folks in the event supply chain to help with this lift. But it's going to be a huge event, a huge draw, amazing vendors opportunity and sponsorship opportunity, and ultimately just a win for the space, because it's such a quantum leap towards greater normalization that we're just really excited. So August 20th.
It's very exciting.
Cannabis, that's another thing. So we have, again, circling back to the challenge of the term Exspiravit and too many syllables and the Latin and the X. How do you get an X and an S next to each other? What do they do? I don't know. Should I fake it? Should
Who knows?
I just not say
Mystery.
So henceforth, we are doing business as Canvas Events. So that's CANN, play on cannabis, Canvas Events. So we hope you see our logo and our moniker, Canvas Events. And actually for our August 20th event, you can tune in. Now, we also have a smaller event coming up, which was our sticking our toe in the water. Turned out to be a private event, but we're doing a Canna Golf event June 18th out in Burton, Michigan. Tickets are on sale at canvasevents.com. You can check us out, and it's just cannabis-friendly golf. There'll be some prizes, some games, a ball drop. We'll have wake and bake breakfast and a little bit of lunch. And
I wonder what the scores will be.
I'm not, Steve. I've told you, I'm not a golfer.
No,
however, I think there'll be no judgment that day.
Exactly.
I think there'll be less judgment on that day.
No judgment, just a lot of fun. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Golfers, non-golfers, there's spectator tickets, and for those who just want to participate in what they imagine the intersection of cannabis and golf, come on out. It's going to be a load of fun.
This is like a perfect time to say, Michael, how do people get a hold of you, and how do people get tickets?
Yes, so tickets are available at Canvas Events. That's again at CANNVAS events, EVENTS.com. Our website is Exspiravit.com, and I welcome you to take up the challenge. It's behind me, but Exspiravit.com. You can find us there. We're on Instagram as Exspiravit_solutions. And we're also, you can find me on LinkedIn under W. Michael Webster. And we're accessible. We're out there. Yeah, we know that successful operation is about the relationships, meeting folks where they are. So we're an open book. And we've got a whole menu of other events coming behind our Canna Carnival, but all the sites are set on the Muskegon Mercy Health Arena for the August 20th Canna Carnival.
So one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you, want to interview you, because you have a long history with cannabis. You have an emotional story with cannabis.
Yep.
you have had to pivot in cannabis.
Yes.
And I think this is, I think, a very good object lesson for everyone who
Yes.
listens to the show. Things do not always appear in a straight line. You have to be able to make changes, and you have to be able to work hard. Clearly, something that you know a lot about.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really thrilled to have you. I mean, you're really on a new frontier. I mean, you really
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. We feel like we're at the tip of the spear for a new space, and there's an importance attached to what we're doing. The cultivators, they're doing noble work. They're bringing the plant and various derivatives to market. The retailers are providing access, but we're helping carve out that infrastructure, Steve. We make the argument to municipalities that if you zoned for a grocery store, you as a municipality have an obligation to build a road to further access so that that grocery store can be successful and can scale. We view ourselves as part of the infrastructure for
Right.
the cannabis market. You owe it. The municipality owes it to us, owes it to their current cannabis operators to allow us to operate so that they can bring mobility to their business model. They can showcase their wares. They can enjoy trade and some of the traditional interactions, meeting your customer out in the field. They deserve that as well. So we've pivot. Part of our pivot has been realizing our role, where we fall in the supply chain. We are clearly part of the cannabis market infrastructure, and we want to be respected as such. And what we're bringing is just not just the credibility, but the opportunity to showcase and the opportunity to expand the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michael, as we wrap up the show, and it's really been super exciting to have you on
Yeah.
here. I'm so glad that you will be there, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you when I come to the Midwest
Yes.
for my commencement address at the Cleveland
Yes.
School of Cannabis. Big
Yes. We're
shout
all
out to
looking
the
forward to
Cleveland
you.
School of Cannabis and their
Yes.
graduating class.
Yes. We talked about their
So
importance.
absolutely. So,
Yeah.
Michael, as you know, I write about power, I consult about power, I talk about leadership. So,
Yes.
give us one little, not little, but one important leadership concept that's been important to you, and your thoughts about power. What does power mean to you, and what,
Sure.
how do you think about leadership?
As an equity operator, there's nothing more central, to my argument for being here, um, and potential success than power. I come out of a tradition of the denial or uh, the prevention of access or prohibition
Right.
of access to power. So I am myself the incarnate of what power distribution and equity should look like. But as a small, we can be advocates, we can be proponents, but if we're not successful operators, we're not tending the guard. We're not maintaining that space where we can advocate and where we can act as proponents for. So when I think about power in relation to my ascent as a founder and as a managing member and a CEO, I can't help but focus on titles. And forgive me, I'm not stealing from your book, but I was just so inspired. Chapter 6, power is more than a title.
Yeah.
It's so much more than a title. And if you get caught up in the title, many of my colleagues who have come through incubators or accelerators alongside, other equity operators, there's a real focus on getting the right title because you feel like that's going to get you the conversation or that's going to get you in the room or whatever. And there's a certain degree of truth in that. But when you're dealing, we have an opportunity to build a healthy market, one that does not just mirror CPG or, capitalist markets. We can build something a little more healthy. And that starts, that's a top down thing. So wielding your title, flexing, it's not the thing to do. Build trust, build relationships with your coworkers, your compatriots, your employees, your suppliers, anyone in your ongecosystem. Build that credibility in that relationship. And that's where the real power is. Power is not in the title. I only deploy the title when necessary or strategically effective. Other than that, I'm just Michael. So that's what I've learned about power.
Well, Michael, it's such a great honor to have you on the show and so much fun. And I can't wait to see you when I go out to the Midwest.
Absolutely.
And all the best with your with your events, and please let us know how we can promote them on the show.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
really such a pleasure and a great, wonderful opportunity to see you. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks to your audience. I appreciate it.
Take care.